Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
I think I'm going to be president.
Okay, so that works.
For the most part, yeah.
We have to get used to it, but yeah. Okay, so everybody know this. Thank you very much for the support and the buying of the podcast. We have a video presenter now, and all we have to do is learn how to use it. As well as Donald Trump uses the tax code. Ooh, segue. No, seriously, that's a pretty cool thing right there. I'm digging it. Okay, so I think everybody understands now that Donald Trump has morphed into Leona Helmsley, right? Does everybody remember who Leona Helmsley is from the Helmsley Palace, which now belongs to the Saudis? You know that, right? Helmsley Palace has been sold to the Saudi Arabians, and it's that big, beautiful building on top of Grand Central Station where I used to live. I used to live right up the street from that. And Leona Helmsley went to prison because she said only the little people pay taxes. When they found that Leona Helmsley didn't pay her taxes, her comment was only little people pay taxes. And apparently that's true. And that's painful, but that's true because I'm not the first one to tell you today or yesterday or even the day before that Donald Trump did not pay any taxes in that year, 1995. Now, what's crazy is his surrogates, okay, Rudy and Christie. Now, I'm going to play this and then I'm going to tell you why it's important. This is just audio.
He's a genius. I mean, the reality is absolute genius. I mean, the man in The Art of the Deal, this is described. First of all, we're talking about 26 years ago. Perfectly legal. We should get that straight immediately. This is a perfectly legal application of the tax code. And he would have been a fool not to take advantage of it.
The Times fails to point out that he has an obligation as the head of a business to take advantage of and to use the lawful deductions and tax advantages that are available to you. And he did something we admire in America. Really? He came back. The Art of the Deal is all about that. He talks about it. So did Steve Jobs. So did Winston Churchill.
The genius of Donald Trump has been to make sure that he follows the law, which is exactly what he's done. And politically, he has said that he's going to change these laws and that there's no one who's better suited to change these laws than someone like him who's been subjected to audit by the IRS year after year after year.
Okay, so that was Rudy Giuliani. Sorry, I have to say his name. And then Christie, right? Christie. You know what's fascinating about Christie is that when Donald Trump was taking all these losses and stiffing all these small businesses, it was in Christie's state, New Jersey, New Jersey. And when Donald Trump was not paying taxes, it was in Rudy Giuliani's state, New York. And these two people think he's a genius. No, the genius is a guy named Mr. Mitnick. It's always a guy named Mr. Mitnick. No, I'm not kidding. It's Mr. Mitnick. Mr. Mitnick is the accountant for Donald Trump and had been the accountant for Donald Trump for 30 years. Mr. Mitnick was quoted in the same article that the media probably did not read. They only read the headlines about Donald Trump's tax record show he could have avoided taxes for nearly 2 decades. The Times found, that's the New York Times article. But deep in the article, it says Mr. Mitnick, though, said there were times when even he, for all his years helping wealthy New Yorkers navigate the tax code, found it difficult to face the incongruity of his work for Mr. Trump. He felt keenly aware that Mr. Trump was living a life of unimaginable luxury, thanks in part to Mr. Mitnick's ability to relieve him of the burden of paying taxes like everyone else. Quote, here the guy was building incredible net worth and not paying tax on it, he said. It's not Donald Trump that's the freaking genius. It's Mr. Mitnick who's the freaking genius. And it's always a guy named Mitnick. But I just love how Christie is on the TV saying he's a genius, he's a genius. And then there's this other article about Christie being governor and having to settle the tax debt with Donald Trump. Well, it didn't just happen, and it wasn't just the IRS. Donald Trump went to a negotiation with Christie. And, you know, Hillary kind of stole our line about How do you lose money in the casino business when the house always wins? Okay, good. I'm glad you found use for it. Just finish it, because she said she started down the road and then she didn't finish the line. She said something about, and he was in the casino business. How do you lose money in the casino business? Now tag it with the house always wins, okay? Except your house. Thank you. All right, so this is the article about Chris Christie. Chris Christie, I won't read it to you, but this is in the New York Times as well. And apparently, the news people, the models, only read the headlines while they're getting their makeup and hair. That's all the time they have, apparently. I don't know. But this is the story about Chris Christie. Chris Christie took office at a time when Donald Trump had interest payments on a debt he owed to New Jersey. The interest payments had grown to almost $30 million. The state of New Jersey had pursued this casino bankruptcy case with Donald Trump. They even accused Donald Trump's company of filing false reports with the state casino regulators about the amount of taxes it has paid. Now, we don't know because he won't release these damn taxes, okay? All we got was like 3 pages of the tax return, and people are still wondering, where did the tax return come from? And the only thing that I can conclude, and of course because they won't name their sources, even if they knew them, is that Marla did it. Because Marla is the other signatory to those pages. And she's probably the only, I know Mr. Mitnick didn't do it because Mitnick is 80 years old, living in Florida, living the good life. What, he's going to stick his toe in now? Come on. So it had to be Marla. But the amount in interest that Donald Trump owed at the time that Chris Christie was governor of New Jersey was $5 million. And New Jersey, the state of New Jersey wanted that money. Obviously, look at the condition that Atlantic City was left in. Okay, that place is just a mess. It's a disaster. It's high crime now. It's boarded up windows. The Trump casino, they finally took the name off it like this year. It's just a wreckage. It's a wreckage of Donald Trump's life. Everything there just shows you what the inside of Donald Trump looks like, the inside of his business, the inside of his soul, the inside of everything that Donald Trump tries to do benefits Trump and leaves a mess behind, a mess. So, while I could sit here and tell you what everybody else has told you, yes, you like roads, yes, you like bridges, yes, you like schools, but, obviously these people, the billionaires, don't pay for any of that. They just criticize all of it. But now we find out that we have to pay for chumps and tax evaders like Donald Trump, like General Electric, like a lot of companies that we're well aware of. But this is Chris Christie negotiating with Donald Trump over this $5 million in interest payments, okay? Over this $30 million in interest payments. Turns out Chris Christie, after 6 years in court, Chris Christie becomes governor, and he decides to settle it with Donald, his best buddy. So he settles it with Donald for just $5 million, or 17 cents on the dollar of what the auditors said Donald Trump's casinos owed. That's like amazing. And look at Atlantic City. Look at what happens when somebody takes advantage of borrowing money with no intention to ever do business. He has this guy, Marvin Rothman, who wrote, he was a Wall Street watcher. He was a reporter for a brokerage house, and he reported on, whether this was a good investment or that's a good investment, looked at Trump's casinos, said this thing, as soon as October comes and the cold winds start blowing, Donald Trump can't possibly survive here. I wonder if he even wants to. And Donald Trump says, I'm going to sue you. I'm suing you. And has this man fired, and then stiffed everybody that did the work on the casinos, settles with the state of New Jersey after leaving a garbage heap behind, not even to do the cleanup, on 17 cents on the dollar. And then Chris Christie goes on TV saying he's a genius. That's the sickening story. That's the nauseating part. The people around Donald Trump, and they all want something. You know what Chris Christie wants? Chris Christie wants to be Attorney General. What do you think he wants? A pardon. For Bridgegate? No. So he wants a pardon, and then he'll be Attorney General of the United States. Seriously, I mean, this is such a disgusting story, and yet you're only getting like the tip of the iceberg. You know, look, we live in a country where it's almost like we're used to the fact that lobbyists and rich people who buy lobbyists and buy people who lobby on the tax code, that they get their way and that we don't. I mean, we're almost comfortable with it. Unless you see that no billionaire will ever pay for their mistakes. We will. We have to pay for them too. That's what's so disgusting. I mean, if I lose my iPhone, I got to pay for it. If he loses his business, I got to pay for it. This is exactly what this election is about. Income inequality through gaming the system. Donald Trump is not the genius that's going to fix it. Mr. Mitnick is the genius that can fix it. And many lobbyists I know are the geniuses who can fix it. But they don't have us as clients. I can't afford Mr. Mitnick, and I can't afford Howard. So that's the story. The story is not, Donald Trump's tax. Everybody is pretty much down with the fact that Donald Trump is never going to show his taxes because there's something wrong with them. Now, I will say he claimed this $916 million, almost $1 billion worth of losses, but we still don't know who he owed that money to. And that's the problem. We don't know who he owed the money to. Did he owe money to the Russians? Does he owe money to the Chinese? We know he owed money to New Jersey. And we know that Christie said, it's on me. Or, translation, it's on the people of Atlantic City. They're going to pay for the cleanup. You screwed it up, they'll clean it up. Do it again, Donald. And then he did do it again. He took his company public. After that, he took that same disgusting company that took God only knows how many losses, right? We don't know. We just know his personal loss. His personal loss was almost $1 billion. We don't know who we owe the $1 billion to. We don't know what the business owes. We have no idea. But he took that sick company that he lost $1 billion on. He took it public. And then he stiffed the investors. That stock went up to $35 with him selling it. And by the time Trump took $44 million out, that stock was worth 17 cents.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandyRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.